Welcome to the Evidence-Based Therapist, where we read so you don't have to.
Here you'll find clinicians and researchers discussing cutting-edge research from the embodied relational sciences, explaining why and how people work together to find healing.
Thanks for checking out this podcast. The Evidence-Based Therapist is a project of Think Beyond, a listener-funded media house focused on connecting humans through therapy and art. To keep this podcast going, we'd love for you to support us on Patreon by searching patreon.com/thinkbeyondhealing in your favorite web browser. We're taking our first steps into a new article. The article is Presence Psychotherapy, a novel integrative trauma treatment model for thorough memory reconsolidation by Michelle Leapock and Gregory Carson. This article, 2022, important to note, is the second in this mini-series, where the last article that we reviewed from Geller and Greenberg was introducing to the Evidence-Based Therapist podcast this idea of presence. Kind of one of the seminal, still referenced in this article, as well as one of the seminal contributions of presence in psychotherapy literature. And then this article is taking us even farther into the introduction of a presence-oriented approach to psychotherapy. So this article does two things. The first is bring together the existing literature from that large field landscape that you mentioned of parts work, body, intersubjective, relational, depth-oriented, experiential, et cetera, bringing all of that literature to the focus point of presence to develop a model that this article showcases.
Yeah.
And so it is a very well-written article. I love the section that this is an important differentiation between mindfulness and presence. That mindfulness, they describe, is the act of bringing present awareness to something without judgment. And then they differentiate immediately that presence then is the awareness of our ontologically connected state of being.
And they give language that feels very like orienting to, there's not just one presence, one type of presence in therapy, and that clients can have a tendency towards different presences, different ways of feeling safe being present. And that from there, once you know where they feel safe, then we can start to imagine feeling safe in one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And that to me feels really that dynamic of you can go anywhere and that will help. But then also, like, can you realize where you're going from and track that? That's a hard thing to conceptualize and help clients learn and feel safe in that process.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated the language of this article and giving an orienting framework.
We're just talking about mindfulness. To me, the best we can hope for is that non-judgmental witness.
Yeah.
But it's a distanced witnessing. It may be an observation less than a witness.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about presence, and there's a line here that I think will segue nicely into deepening the conversation about presencing, but it says, presence strengthens mindfulness's amygdala mediating effect, therefore making it ideal for countering the physiological effects of PTSD and strengthening one's ability to affect regulate, as well as access and process implicitly held traumatic memory. Okay, so you're talking about physiological reactions of cortisol, norepinephrine, endorphins, etc. Like you're talking about activation in the body and how it's regulated interpersonally. But that presencing moves mindfulness even deeper into the body to focus on a physiological state shift, not just an observation of the activation.
Yeah. So they say affect, regulate, as well as access and process implicitly held traumatic memory. Like and that's maybe where we're talking is like, it's one thing to regulate through observation of mindfulness. It's another thing to process through what you're observing showing up in the self.
Yeah. To move through the self.
Yeah.
One of the things I appreciate about how they segue to the next section is that the next section is called Easy Access to Presence, provides multiple regulation options. And I love that because even for me as the reader, when we start talking about ontologically connected sense of being, it feels like we're talking about something ethereal, something
Yeah.
disembodied,
Privileged
something
even?
privileged and like heady. But then to immediately ground it with easy access points. We're not talking about something that's privileged, or we're not talking about well, it still is kind of privileged, but we're not talking about something that is far away
Yeah.
and high maintenance, expensive. Like we're talking about something that is as immediate as is your breath,
Yeah.
as is your walking, as is your going throughout your day.
Yeah. It's a biological imperative.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about presence, we're not talking about something that people don't have.
Right.
We're talking about something that people have learned to forget they have. Because they quote Kohut, which is beautiful, but because it's in this line of what you're talking about of we're not talking about the thing that people don't have. We're trying to discover how they're having it already.
Yeah.
And they say the option to integrate techniques from multiple evidence-based treatment models within the scope of presence awareness is designed to meet the client in the manner that is most experientially near and which will provide the greatest portal into their symptom-producing memory networks. And I just love that as like a, in SIP, we talk about how we're like polylinguistic as therapists. Like, what's the language that makes sense to the client? Don't force your language on them.
Yeah, impose.
And I think they're coming at this as well as like, because they divide presence into these 4 quadrants, which we'll get to, because I want to fucking spin up on that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's beautiful. But before they talk about it, they say like, remember, there is no sequential order. There's no this, then that, then this, then that. It's what's most experientially near to the client.
I love that
and
language.
Then go from there.
Yeah, I love that language.
It's a good article when you're almost frustrated that it ended. Like, there's so much more I need to know.
And you guys clearly do know about it.
You have something more to say.
Yes.
And I can feel it in the article.
Yes. And to read something like that and then ask the next question, which is like, is there a training on this?
Yeah.
Where is the more that I know is there?
Yes.
That they're clearly speaking to. And there is a training in presence psychotherapy.
Yeah.
So just give that a Google.
Yeah. And they're not even paying us to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on this article, they deserve.
Unaffiliated. We didn't.
Yeah.
We are not paid to do this.
No, not at all.